Hello YouTube, I'm back with a build review on the Phoenix Model Pilatus PC-9. I've got a lot to talk about on this one. This build was probably one of the more challenging Phoenix Model builds I've ever done. But in the end, it looks like it came together pretty well, and I'm excited to fly it. I mean, that tricycle landing gear is retractable, which is really cool on a paved runway. The Great Plains spinner fit on there really nice with the aluminum backplate, a really small gap with the Cobra 710 motor. Overall, it looks great. I'm happy with the end result, but I'm going to go through some of the areas where I had problems, and I've built a lot of airplanes too, so these are probably comments that would apply to most people unless you've got a whole bunch of building experience. One thing I'll say for sure, I don't think this plane is really a beginner's build. It just took a little finagling and working out and drawing on past experience from scratch builds and foamies and other balsa planes that I've worked on in the past. So anyway, with that said, let's get started. First things first, the Cobra motor I used is not, the plane is designed to use a rimfire. So they cut the firewall. I've got the cowl on so I can't really show you, but they've cut the firewall and drilled the holes in it so that it would fit the rimfire stock, which is really nice if you want to use rimfire. Cobra motors are cheaper and I think a little more powerful, so I elect to go with those instead. And because of that, you have to do some work on the firewall. That's no big deal. You just basically fill the existing pre-drilled motor mount holes with epoxy and then use your Cobra X mount as a template to re-drill, which is fine. The other problem you have with that though is the Cobra motor is a little bit shorter, so it doesn't stand out as far. In order to get this spinner to work, the cowl is pushed back as far as it'll go, and I had to use a prop washer on the back of this back plate here in order to push the back plate up far enough, and then of course there's a prop washer on the front too. So in the end I got it to work. It just takes a little finagling. The next thing I'll talk about is the empennage. Now you're supposed to take a measure when you build these so that your empennage tips are equidistant over the main wing saddle. So this, let me try and get this prop out of the way. This height right here to here, and that height from there to there. Those are both supposed to be even. Well, when I first put it together, the horizontal stabilizer was way off. I mean, it took a lot of filing and sanding to get that saddle for the horizontal stabilizer level enough so that I was happy with the result mounting that horizontal stabilizer. About the vertical stabilizer, which was also off. I mean, it was leaning over like that. So the hard part about that is that you got to figure out what exactly it is you need to carve in the saddle and or on the rudder in order to make it fit. I don't like taking material off the rudder, so I ended up spending a lot of time kind of carving out the saddle, you know, the slot in the fuselage to get that to stand up straight. So for me, at least on my particular build, I don't know if it was a bad day at the Phoenix headquarters or what, but it just took an unusual amount of time to get that whole empennage square correctly. And that's unusual for Phoenix models. I put a lot of these together, and that's the first time I've really had to make that kind of investment in time getting that section square. Okay, back to the cowl. I mentioned earlier that I had to kind of push it on there. Now, I want to show you the clearance for the prop. So there is just enough clearance on that back plate. It's just maybe 2 millimeters. It's not much, but it's clear. But let me show you, I want to show you from the back what that looks like. It doesn't look too bad from the side, but look at it from the back. You see that, you can see that arc right there. It's like it's just not square. And by the way, if you look at it from the front, it's not that I have it cockeyed. That's as straight as I could make it. If you look at it from the front, you can see side to side, the clearance is identical, and I actually have a little bit of more clearance on the top, so this rounded part of the cowl rises a little bit above the back plate versus the bottom where it's basically flush. And that actually eased the problem. If I pushed this down so that it was equidistant all the way around, that arc got even worse. So something's off with either the airframe or the cowl. I probably could have spent some time filing or trimming down the frame to figure it out, but I just decided to live with it. Another thing you have to do on this plane, it's cool that they put the cooling in this one. If you watch my Spitfire video, you'll know that they have an air scoop down on the bottom, but there's no direct cooling of the ESC in the Spitfire. This one has a real nice air scoop right where it belongs. And the ESC, I don't have the ESC in this plane yet. It'll be in there soon, but that's where the ESC will be, and it'll get plenty of nice cooling in there. So I'm really happy about that. You do have to take on the landing gear and carve out of the cowl a little space for the landing gear clearance, because when you put that cowl on, the nose wheel will not extend with the stock cowl. You have to take and use a Dremel and cut that section out. Not a big deal, but again, just a little bit more work than what I'm used to with Phoenix models. I'm not a gas guy. I know gas guys are carving cowls up all the time, but electric guys tend not to spend too much time with the Dremel and cowls. All right, I'm gonna get the plane stand over and flip it over and cover some stuff on the underneath. Okay, the biggest problem I had with this plane was when I was setting up the empennage. You're supposed to take a measurement from the tip of the stabilizer. Let me find it. There it is. The tip of the stabilizer to the tip of the wing, and then you do that on this side as well, from the tip to that wing tip, and you want those equal. And then on top of that, you want that vertical measurement that we talked about earlier to be the same, and that'll give you a square, true flying airplane. Well, when I first put this together, I spent some time getting the wingtip, the tip of the horizontal stabilizer measured up to the wingtip. And I thought, okay, this is good. I'm going to mark my spot and cut the covering off and go ahead and glue that in. But then I stepped back, thankfully, and looked at the airplane and realized that the horizontal stabilizer was way off. I mean, it was really cranked over to the side. And then when I started thinking about it, I realized that, well, the only possible cause for that would be that the wings were cocked off to the side. So even just a little bit, but when you start doing angular math and geometry, you realize that a real small variation up here, where the one wing tip sits back just a few millimeters, really gets exacerbated on the tail. So when I started looking at what was going on, I looked at this gap and I realized, wow, that gap's not the same. This end was almost non-existent, and this end was bigger than it is now. And the reason for that was these holes that they had pre-drilled weren't right. They did not line up correctly for the wing to sit flush in the leading edge pocket. So what I ended up having to do was hog out these holes, both of them, and basically slide them over. So I'm not real happy with that. I think before I go fly, what I'll probably do is take these out and work with some bolts, some metal bolts, and put some epoxy in to seal around the open space, because I don't want these wings sliding around. I mean, you can wrench these down, but man, I just don't want to trust that. So anyway, that's probably the biggest structural problem on the plane that I had, and that took some correcting. But thankfully, once I got that figured out, then everything else squared up really nice. One of the other tells that I had big time on that, which kind of first clued me into where I had the problem aside from the visual, was I also took a measure from the tip of the horizontal stabilizer to the inner corner where the aileron, inboard of the ailerons on both sides, and they were really off. They were like 10 or 15 millimeters off from each other, even though the wingtips were right. So something was definitely not right. Took me a little while to figure it out, but I got it. Okay, you can see I've got this on my wheel wells. I've got these white rings. The reason for that is when I epoxied these in, I used a little bit of masking tape just along the edge here, just to hold these in while the epoxy dried. And then when I came out, I know how to peel tape too. You know, I peel it at 180 degrees. So when I peel tape off, I kind of fold it back on itself and slowly work it back. Well, sure enough, on both of the wheel wells, the paint chipped. And I don't have any red paint. I really didn't feel like trying to match red paint and then worry about painting over the covering. So I got out a sanding block and started sand it. That, of course, you know, you can sand the stuff, it won't come off. So I figured, well, the masking tape did a pretty good job, so strung out some masking tape and just kind of laid it on there and ripped it off, and sure enough, I got a nice white edge. So while that's not really the way it's supposed to be, I think it looks okay. It'll give it another distinguishing characteristic when I'm up flying anyway. Okay, next thing you might notice, I got rid of the mechanical retracts for the wings. Hobby King had these servoless retracts that were direct replacements, and they were pretty cheap. I think they were 12 bucks. So I just swapped them out. They're pretty much a direct replacement. The only thing that I'll say, you'll notice I don't have the covers, the wheel well covers on the arms, and that's because when the standoffs that go on the shock right here are on, the back side of the standoff comes too close to the surface of the servoless retract, so it didn't fit. Now what I could probably do, and I may still do, is those standoffs are complete rings. I may just cut the back side off, sand them down a little bit, and maybe epoxy them on and put the doors on, but I'm not really that worried about it. Just a warning though, if you're thinking about using the Hobby King retracts, that's the one main adjustment that I had to perform. The other thing I did was I shimmed underneath this side to get the wheels to sit deeper in the well. I don't know if the mechanicals were having that problem or not, but I did shim the outboard 2 screws with just a couple of washers so the wheels would sit further down in the well. And I also wanted the strut to be down in the wheel well as well. And until I shimmed it, it was sitting a little proud. Okay, there was one other real kind of significant problem, and unfortunately I don't have the plane apart, so you'll just have to work with me. But the front wheel is steered by these pull cables. So on the inside of the plane, you've got a servo arm, and you've got turnbuckles coming off one side and off the other, which is fine. It works. You have to adjust it and get the cable tightened up. The problem I had is that, thankfully I saw this because I had the wing off and I was just kind of operating the gear. But when I'd operate the rudder and I'd move that arm back and forth, one of the turnbuckles swung out to the side because the cable that's normally under tension with the gear extracted, when you pull the gear in, the cable goes slack, and the cable ended up pushing on the turnbuckle, which pushed the turnbuckle like this, sideways. And when I operated the rudder, it jammed the turnbuckle into the side of the airplane. That's just really, there was no mechanism in the build process to deal with that. So what I ended up doing was first thing I did was I twisted the cable so that it had inward pressure. So that way when it went slack, the propensity of the cable was to go in. And then the second thing I did was I took a piece of gift card. I have these white blank plastic credit card size cards that I got from Amazon. So I took and I cut a strip about, I'd say about half an inch high and about 2.5 inches wide, and I glued it on the side of the fuselage where that turnbuckle was making contact. And by doing that, by doing those two things, after that, it just doesn't jam up. There's nothing left for it to get caught on, so it seems to operate just fine. And see, these are some of the reasons I say on this build, it's really not much of a beginner build, because if you don't fiddle with stuff like that and catch it, then it's a little, that can get you into trouble. I could see a point where the nose gear might not come down, and if that didn't come down when you were landing, then you're gonna scrape up the front pretty good. Okay, one other thing about this build that was a little challenging, but I also kind of like it, and that's this compartment in the back. This is where the receiver is housed. So I'll pop that off, and you can see I've got all my servo cables from the various servos coming back here, and grabbing on the receiver. So I kind of like that because the receiver is way out of the way, but it's very easy access if you want to make any changes or swap the receiver out or set the failsafe. Real easy to get to. The problem with it is that you're running a lot of extensions because you've got your ailerons are over here on the wings, so you got to run extensions in there and a Y. You've got your steering servo and your rudder servo that also have to be wired together. And then because I use the servoless retracts, they had to be wired together with this retract. So it took, more wiring than is traditional for this type of setup. It was a lot of Y connections and a lot of routing and running of wires inside the fuselage. And you can imagine that can be a little trying when you got to stick your hand in the back here through this compartment and try and feed the wire through it. It took a night, basically. I just kind of messed around with that for a night to get everything set up right. So servos, that's another thing I wanted to mention. In the instructions, it calls for, I believe it's 6 servos, but that's wrong. It's actually 7. So you have your aileron servo number 1, aileron servo number 2, then you have your elevator and rudder, that's 3 and 4, and then you also have a servo for the steering wheel, that's the front wheel, that's standalone, that's 5, and then you have retract servos, 1 for the main gear and 1 for the nose gear, that's 7. So the book only calls for 6. So if you're going to build this airplane, plan accordingly. Now, because I went with servoless retracts, I didn't need the high-tech retract servo in the center of the wing where you'd normally put that. But I still needed to have that 5th servo for the steering wheel. So other than that, those are pretty much the high points of the plane. The decals, the Aussie decals, I did some time on the web kind of staring at the Pilatus, making sure I understood how the Aussies line up their decals, and I think they may treat their kangaroo a little bit like we do the blue and white stars in the States, and that's that the blue and white stars are always going forward. So these are actually, from what I can tell by looking at the pictures, that's on correct, and all the kangaroos seem to be facing forward on the Pilatus aircraft that I found on the web. So anyway, I'm gonna flip this thing back over and we'll wrap the video up. Okay, I took the battery hatch off to show you the battery compartment. I have not put the Velcro strap down, but I'll be using a 5-cell Zippy 3700. That fits in there pretty well, and the plane balances. I have some temporary marks on there for balance while I do the maiden and figure out where I like the balance point. But the 3700 in there, and no ESC, I have to note that there's no ESC. At this point, it balances okay. So I might have to fiddle around with that ESC. Hopefully it's not too heavy and doesn't throw off the balance too much, but there's a little room for this battery to slide back. I have read that the Pilatus tends to come out nose heavy, and that doesn't surprise me given that I haven't put an ESC in here yet. So that's about it. Those are the main points of the video. As soon as I get that ESC in there, I'll be getting this out to the field to get a maiden in, and hopefully a decent maiden video. And that's that. So overall, the look of the aircraft is really cool. I'm kind of, it's kind of odd. It's an odd airframe, but it looks, I like it. It's a little funky, but I kind of like the way it looks. So I'm expecting it to fly really well. So keep an eye on the channel for the maiden video. I'll get that posted as soon as I can. And that's about it for now. So hopefully this has been helpful to you and you enjoyed it. If so, please hit like and subscribe. That helps my results show up higher when people are looking for material on this airplane. All right, take care.